Do you know, as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, what is the biggest challenge in GST? What is the core challenge in GST? That I'm telling you, the core challenge or the biggest challenge. Hopefully, you would be agree with my statement that the reconciliations of input tax credit, utilizations of input tax credit while discharging the outward tax liability, because this is directly impacting to your cash flow. It is directly impacting to your working capital. So now it become a core, an important part for your business. What happens when you start to impanel to your suppliers, getting an opportunity and services from your suppliers, paying to your suppliers against those invoices that you have received, against those services that you have received? This is good, that everything are in the right track and the right model of the business. But when it comes to know about the GST, now your supplier has not paid the tax to the government, has not filed the GST or one, would you be able to take the input tax benefit? Would you be able to take the input tax benefit? No. So here is the problem in the buyer or the recipient hand. Then what is our fault? We have paid the amount to the suppliers. We have paid the tax amount to the suppliers. Supplier has not paid the amount to the government. Supplier has not filed the tax returns to the governments. Where is our fault as a buyer or recipient? So now there are a lot of changes the government has made in the Union Budget 2022, which is notified and applicable with effect from 1st October 2022. So the changes made in section 37, section 39, and in section 37, that is that all those GSTR one of the previous month that the supplier must file before starting to file the GSTR one of the current month. In section 39, the GSTR one of the current month is mandatorily filed before the supplier start to file the GSTR 3 of the current month. So the GST 3B of the current month would be active only when the supplier is filing the GSTR 1 of the current month. GSTR 2B, which has been applicable with from 1st October 1st January 2022. Now you know about the conditions, you know about that how this is important to reconcile the GSTR 2B with your input register, with your GST input and availing the input tax credit. Now, when I talk about the availing the input tax credit, how you will start to avail the input tax credit, this is important. So, the input tax credit, as per section 16 subsection 2 of CGST, there were 4 conditions. And these 4 conditions were applicable till 31st December 2021. What were the 4 conditions? The first condition is that the buyer or recipient must have the tax invoice copy. The second one is that the buyer or recipient must receive the goods or services. The third one is that the supplier must discharge or pay the tax subject to section 41 either through the electronic cash or electronic credit. Here again one question from the buyer end. The supplier has discharged the tax liability. And what the supplier has discharged the tax liability, which does not include the invoices that the supplier has raised to the buyers, to the specific buyer. Buyer has already paid the amount against the invoice to the suppliers. Now the buyer has the problem that how the buyer can be able to avail the input tax credit even though the buyer has already paid the amount to the supplier against those invoices, against those services. So here supplier has to ensure that all those invoices that the supplier has raised for a month must ensure to file in their GSTR 1 and pay the tax accordingly to the government through GSTR 3B. The fourth condition is the buyer or recipient must comply with the tax returns regularly. So these are the 4 conditions that the buyer must have the invoice copy, buyer must receive the goods or service, supplier must pay the tax, and the buyer must comply with the tax returns regularly. These were the 4 conditions under 16 subsection 2. Now with effect from 1st January 2022, the fifth conditions were added. And what was the fifth condition? That the buyer or recipient can be able to avail the input tax credit only and only if it is available, reconciled with GSTR 2B. So now the concept of GSTR 2B is mandatory with effect from 1st January 2022. So what is the buyer scope now? Whether buyer would be able to take the input tax benefit basis of whatever the invoices the buyer has recorded and booked in the records. Would the buyer would be able to take from 1st January 2022? I don't think so, because the clause here is the mandatory clause and there is a restrictions that you have to check that whatever the invoices that your supplier has issued and you have recorded in your books of account, whether all those invoices are available and reconciled in GSTR 2B. So before you are going to discharge the tax liability through GSTR 3B, you have to make sure that your input tax credit is getting reconciled. The consequences is a very, very impactful for your business. Understand this. It is a retrospective. Now understand that it is being applicable from 1st January 2022 or in March. You have simply paid the tax in GSTR 3B without reconciling with the GSTR 2B. It means whatever the input available in your books, you have simply taken and paid the balance tax. Now GST officer started to create the alarm system, asking to you that whatever the input you have taken, that input is not available in your GSTR 2B. So it is a saukaj notice that you have paid that less tax. Now understand this. It is a bigger problem in your business. So what you have to do here is that you have to be compulsory reconcile all those input before you start to discharge the net liability through GSTR 3B. You have to reconcile all those input and get it to impacted in your GSTR 3B of only the reconciled input, so that you will not have any questions from the GST department, GST authority. The 6 conditions which has been applicable with effect from 1st October 2022, and it is again a very important. Now government says, basis of whatever the data he has available, the government has available. Government seen that there are a lot of entrepreneurs and the business owner who are doing the business for a 6 month and shut down the business after a 6 month. Government see through the data that there are a lot of entrepreneurs and the business owner who do not have the physical offices, saw the physical offices and done the business for a year, and then when the physical verification of the offices has been done by the authority or department, it was surprised that there was no office. Government observed through the data that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are not paying the tax timely, who are not filing the tax return timely. Government observed through the data that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are issuing the fake invoice for increasing the turnover of the company to be able to get the other benefit from the bankers or any other financial institutions. But the input is not passing to the buyer or recipient. So now the government through the GST councils, and it is through the union budget, now being notified through 1st October 2022. Section 38, subsection 1 and 2 is being applying prospectively. And in these sections, section 38, subsection 2, there were 6 restrictions. And these restrictions are basis of what the government observations through the data, through the prevailing data. Even though the GSTR input is available in your GSTR 2B, the input tax credit is available in your GSTR 2B, you are not able to take the input tax benefit if it is restricted through these 6 sub-clauses of section 38, subsection 2. So it is very, 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 very important that while you are discharging the outward tax liability through GSTR 3B, you have to check the GSTR 2B and see that what is the eligible input available there. Whatever the ineligible input, even though that is available in GSTR 2B, you are not able to take that input because this is ineligible and this is covered under the restriction of these 6 restrictions. So section 38 subsection 1 and 2 are very, very important. The notifications are still of these 6 clauses that government will issue, the GST council will issue letters, but the conditions are defined there. And the conditions are for the ineligible input under GSTR 2B. So these are the 6 criteria. The fourth 1 to 4 is applicable till 31st December 2021. Fifth one got introduced from 1st January 2022 and sixth one is got introduced from 1st October 2022. Where in the 6 conditions you would have the 6 sub-clauses under section 38 subsection 2 which are important. Even though you have the available and eligible input tax credit under GSTR 2B, you will not able to get the input tax benefit because this is covered under the 6 restrictions. So while you are going to avail the input tax benefit, you have to make sure that you are particularly reconciling all this input before you are going to get the input tax credit in your GSTR 3B. GST is the backbone to your business. GST is the vehicle to your business to drive more, to perform more, to deliver more, to create more. But at the same time, if you are not focusing on GST, might be you have a good intentions to create more and more profit. Your all intention to create more and more profit is going to be shut down in the longer period of the time. So now focus on the GST, focus on those notifications, focus on those compliances, focus on all those that are applying to your business and create a sustainable business with the help of compliances. You as an entrepreneur should be more cognizant and create more and more flavor in terms of more and more opportunities with the compliance, with the fulfillment of the compliance. So whatever the business you are, no matter what size of business you have, which business you are deal for, in every business you have to be compulsory apply the GST. If it is registered, then you have to compulsory fulfillment of all those compliances and get it to implement it in your business to be able to get the more and more business opportunity, to create more and more scalable business opportunity and overall growth in your business with the help of the GST compliances. This is Ranjit signing out. Until we meet again, thank you very much.